Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm here from the Worcester Art Museum. I'm very pleased to be bringing you our Art Together online series on Wednesdays. So our first session is going to be Dots, Dots, and More Dots, and we're going to be reading The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds, printed by Candlewick Press. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. There! Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now sign it." Vashti thought for a moment. "Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name." The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was a little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. "Humph! I can make a better dot than that." She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted. A yellow dot, a green dot, a red dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow, she discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting. Lots of little dots in many colors. "If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too." Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're a really great artist." "I wish I could draw," he said. "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Please, sign it." Now, The Dot is a great book, again, by Peter H. Reynolds, because it helps people realize that they can create with just a dot. Now, the art that we're going to be looking at today from the collection of the Worcester Art Museum is Gulf Plum, and this is by Paul Signac. So when you look at the piece of artwork, you'll notice that it's created out of many, many dots, and they're dots in many colors. We have bright orange, we have lavender, pink, blue, and everything else in between. So Paul Signac was an impressionist, which meant that he used his art not only to tell how something looked, but how he felt while he was there. It gives you a mood, like being happy or sad. You'll notice that Paul used colors that were like each other or similar, like all the yellows and oranges on that hill on the right-hand side, so that he could give you an image of what it looked like without painting with big areas. He used different colors together, such as in the leaves where he used blue and green and orange to produce texture, or the idea that maybe that would be bumpy. When he needed to make a line in between two things, he put a lot of little dots next to each other. So, in essence, this is a dot painting. It's also called pointillism. Today, we'll be able to do an art activity together using dots. If you want, we have created a PDF that you can download. It has 4 pages. The first shows the featured book. The second shows the inspiration work from Wham's collection, including a close-up of a corner of his work so that you can see the dots. It also has 2 printouts. One is the Dotty Art Activity. This is for our younger artists and elementary school artists. We also have for our slightly older artists a pointillism activity. We'll be starting today with the Dotty Art Activity. Gather your materials and we'll get started. So today we're going to be doing a project with very simple materials. We see that I have just regular paper here. It's been cut up into squares, so I just use scissors. You can use drawing paper or copy paper, up to you. We're going to be using some crayons, and we're going to use markers. If you have more art materials at home, you can certainly use those as well. This works wonderful with paints, colored pencils, pastels, etc. What we're going to do to start is I'm going to take a crayon and I'm going to go ahead and just draw a couple of circles like this. I'm going to let them overlap each other. So here's one circle and here's the other one. Right in the middle where I drew one circle over the other, that's where it overlaps. I'm going to draw a couple of more. And I'm going to draw some circles that fall all the way off the page. Now, once I have these done, I'm going to start choosing some colors and I'm going to color them in, just one section at a time. And you can keep filling them all in. Now another way to make a dot is to make a dot that isn't a dot or a not dot. Now you can use all sorts of drawing materials for this. I'm just going to switch my material and I'm going to be using markers. So to do this, what I would do is I'm going to outline in dots a circle. And go ahead and fill in the outside with even more dots. Here you can see I have a not dot by making dots around it. You could do one color or more. I'm going to add some more colors to mine. Here you can see that I made the inside dot easier to see by putting a lot of dots around it, even though I don't have as many dots on the edge. There, now I feel like that one is finished. Here are some other dot examples. Here's a dot with lines. This one was done by a 7-year-old. Here's a dot made out of lines. So I had a bunch of lines going one way and then more lines going the other way. Here are some spot dots. I started with the red and then I drew an orange circle around it and a yellow circle, then a green, blue, and purple circle. And when the colors started touching each other, I just sort of wrapped from this circle, bump, around to the next one, bump, and then around the next one. Here are some other circles that don't touch each other, but are sort of like donut circles with dots inside dots. And these were other dots that were made with pens. So what you can do when you're done is these would look lovely all lined up next to each other on the fridge, or you can take them all and lay them out however you'd like and attach them to another piece of paper. Here's an example of what it looks like when you attach a bunch of different dots together. So this is an older example and it has many different types of media. So to give you an idea, this was a dot made of circle dots. This was done in crayon. This dot was done in pencil, and there were circles around circles. These two were done in oil pastel. This one was actually hole punched dots glued on in a dot. This one is crayon. This one's colored pencil. This one is watercolor. And this one is watercolor and crayon. You can use almost anything to make dots. So that's an idea of how to display it. An image. What you're first going to do is take a pencil and then lightly draw out your object. You don't want to do it too heavy because then it would be easy to see your lines afterwards. Then you're going to start with your lighter colors rather than your darker colors and do some outlining in dots with your markers or your crayon or your paints or your crayons. Once I get that outline done, I'm going to want to go back and erase my pencil. Once I've erased my pencil, I can continue working with my dots. So I'm going to use the light colors first. And I always want to make sure I'm thinking about where the light is hitting my art, and that will be where the highlight is. So I'm going to make a few dots around where I want that shiny spot for my highlight. Maybe I want another one here. But see, even when I'm trying to draw lines, I'm using dots. All right, so that's one color down. Now I'm going to use a different color. And I'm going to keep getting darker until you see the finished project. There. So you can see how I used many different colored dots to create this sort of 3D heart shape. I started with the lightest colored dots. These are sort of peach. And then I added some yellow. Then I went ahead and added pink, much more over all of the whole dot. Then I added a lot of red. That was the color that I wanted the heart mainly to be, so I have a lot of red all throughout, with the exception of right here in the middle where I wanted to let some of the pink show through a little bit more. And then at the very end, I used a darker color, in this case, a purple. And I used it to sort of give it shadows and a little bit of outlining here. Now these were all done with dots, not lines. So that is how this was also created. It took a little bit more time, and I worked on this while looking at a flower. Thank you very much for joining me for WHAM's Art Together online program today. Again, the illustrated book that we read was The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. If you and your little artist create some work that they'd like to share, feel free to post online and then use the hashtag WHAMArtTogether. We look forward to seeing you next week.